Good afternoon, everybody. Perfect. So, I would like to share some learnings of working with a large number of founders on helping them set their metrics to get to product market fit faster. Who's a startup founder or works in a startup here in the room right now? One startup founder? More startup founders? Maybe you should check out another talk. Or maybe you should call your friends. So, is it connected? Or do I need to turn it on? Okay, while we're sorting out the technology, I'd like to start talking about why picking metrics early on in the startup journey is important. Yeah? If you're a startup founder, you probably have the goal of raising money from venture capital investors at some point. And having been a VC in one of my previous jobs, I know how important it is to showcase to the investors that you have a data-driven mindset. And the sooner you start thinking about which metrics are we tracking, the more you can think about which metrics are we influencing and taking your decisions on how to develop your company based on those metrics. So one reason to start thinking about metrics early is to become more data-driven. Second reason why I think it's a powerful tool to start thinking about metrics early is to really reverse engineer your growth goals to your activities. So for example, if you want to be a YC company, Y Combinator in the US, the expectation is that you grow by 5 to 7% every week. If you count that into the month, that's 25% a month. And if you know that to get one new customer, you have to make 200 phone calls to potential customers, you can really start to reverse engineer how many phone calls you need to make, right? So the idea of being data-driven and metrics-driven helps you to think about what you actually need to do to achieve those growth goals that investors will be expecting from you. Another good reason to start thinking about the metrics early is to make sure that everyone in your team knows why they're doing whatever they're doing, right? So if you tell everyone in the team that the number of new customers on the mobile app is the most important thing to watch out for, then people can start taking decisions based on that information. If it's not clear that the current goal is to increase the number of mobile users, then people may be running campaigns that help website traffic. They may run campaigns or do things that increase the social media followers. And those things might be vanity metrics. So, third reason why we want to make sure that we talk about metrics early in our startup journey is to make sure that everyone on the team knows of whatever they're doing can be feeding into the bigger goals of the company. And finally, fourth reason is to package all of this together and get to product market fit faster. So I'm not going to repeat the question of who in the room believes they already have product market fit, because there weren't that many founders raising their hand. But the idea of product market fit is complicated, right? Many people talk about product market fit, and there's many definitions for it. Specifically, when you ask the question, what do we need to do to get to product market fit? People may talk about problem-solution fit. That is figuring out if what you're working on, the software or the service or the app, is actually solving a problem of people. And many startups build products that do not solve a problem. So if you haven't figured out as a founder whether or not you have problem-solution fit, this is the starting point. And the talk today is going to focus more on the things that you can do after you've figured out that you're solving a real problem. The next layer would be to think about, do we have language market fit? Do you speak the language that your customers use? So hopefully, those of you working on startup companies, you've heard the word product market fit before. And I didn't call this talk setting metrics to become profitable, because hopefully you're more worried about finding product market fit right now than getting profitable. And similarly, if you haven't done this already, as a founder, I strongly recommend to really think about, are we using the language that our customers are using? Because the more aligned your language in your website, in your app, in your marketing materials, in your phone calls, the more that is aligned to what your customers are used to talking about and want to hear, the more likely it is that we'll reach them at a point where they want to buy from us or use our product. And the third subset of product market fit is channel market fit. And there the question is, once you know what product you have that solves your customer's problem, and once you know that you're using the right language to describe your product, the question becomes, which channel is the most effective to sell this to your customers? Channels could be social media ads on TikTok. It could be business to business, B2B sales with a call center or with an outbound sales team. Or it could be sending emails to your customers. Or it could be a referral channel, right? So there's many different ways of growing your business and finding new customers. And one subset of product market fit is identifying whether you have the right channels to do that. My focus is on metrics today. So that's why language market fit and channel market fit are the two where you can really use numbers to look at whether or not you're getting closer to product market fit or not. So let's look at a definition of product market fit. My favorite one, and there's plenty of them out there, but my favorite one is to have a defined customer, so to know who are the people, the businesses, the individuals that are really going to buy this product. To be in a sizable market. If you're a founder in Georgia, for example, the market is often too small, and you have to think much more globally right from the start, going to the adjacent markets. And then there's 4 things that are important. 1, we need predictability. Investors want to see that what you're doing can be done again and again and again and again. It's predictable. Number 2, it's profitable. In the beginning, it's okay to focus on just growing your revenues or growing your number of users. But eventually, we need to make money with that. And the third and the fourth one are acquisition and retention. So my favorite definition for product market fit is to have a defined target customer in a sizable market with predictable and profitable acquisition and retention. Acquisition here means acquiring and adding new users, and retention means retaining and keeping your existing users. If you do that, you have product market fit. Now, what does that mean for metrics? Number 1, we need to think about something that we can calculate what's going to happen to it tomorrow. We need to think about stuff that makes money. And we need to think about new users or new customers. And we need to think about sort of the returning users or the retention of the existing users. So we talked about some basic ideas of what we need to include when we want to get to product market fit. And now the question is, how do we bring it together? And I'm a huge fan, having worked in a consulting firm once where they told me all the time that I need to use the pyramid principle to communicate. I'm a big fan of structuring the metrics in such a way. Who of you has heard about the pyramid principle before? Awesome, a few people. Now, the pyramid principle says that we can communicate most effectively when we talk about the most important message, the most important summary first. And only once we give them the summary, the resulting insight, we go one level deeper in the pyramid and we talk about the supporting arguments that drive the insights or the facts one level up. I'm sure you've heard about driver trees. So why is a company profitable? The company is profitable because the costs are lower or because the revenue is higher. So just like the profit breaks down into two things one level below, the idea of the metrics pyramid that I'm going to show you next is to structure the metrics in our startup in such a way that the most important metrics are at the top, and those metrics are driven by more and more complicated metrics further down in the pyramid. This is the top of the pyramid. And I call this the key metrics part of the pyramid. One level below, we can put the customer metrics. And at the bottom of the pyramid, we can put the activity metrics. The idea is that we structure our metrics in such a way that at the very top, we have a few, maybe 4 metrics that are the most important ones. You can call them summary metrics, top-level metrics, key performance indicators. I just call them the key metrics here. One level below, we have more metrics, maybe 6 or 8 metrics, that describe the behavior of customers. And if we go even further down in the pyramid, we have the activity metrics, and that's what we as startup founders or startup employees are doing all day long. And I hope it's becoming clear that there's a lot of things that happen at the bottom. The activities, sending emails, posting on social media, calling customers. That drives the behavior of customers, which would be coming to your website, subscribing to your service, coming back to buy your service again. And this behavior of customers drives the key performance, the key metrics at the top. Now let's look at some examples to make this a little bit more interesting. We talked about the product market definition, and we said that there's a revenue component, there's an impact component. Actually, I didn't say that, I'm sorry. So, based on our idea that we want to have predictability, profitability, acquisition, and retention, we can now think about 4 metrics that describe these 4 buckets. And profitability ultimately comes back to how much money you make. So, I would suggest that one of these 4 metrics in the top of the pyramid, there's 4 metrics, right? One of them is about revenue. There's multiple definitions of revenue. Gross merchandise value, GMV, total transaction value, TTV, monthly revenue, gross revenue, revenue run rate. We have to pick one, the most important one for your particular business. In this example here, I put commission revenue in euros. And everything I'm talking about today is something I would measure on a weekly basis. Because if you look at it every day, you're going to spend more time looking at your metrics than running your business. If you look at it once a month, you will have lost many weeks of time to actually react and do something about what's going wrong or leveraging what's going really well. So we have one metric that discusses revenue. A second metric could be about the impact that you're creating in the world. And this can be the impact, like in terms of social impact, sustainability impact, environmental impact, but it can also just be what is different in the world as a result of your startup. So if you take this example here of a travel company, the number of nights booked could be a metric that tells you about the impact your startup or your company has on the real world. And then we said we want to take a very careful, balanced approach of keeping an eye on, are we acquiring users and are we retaining users? So one idea for a acquisition key metric could be the number of new mobile app registrations last week, 357. And an example for a retention metric to measure how well are you keeping your customers could be the percentage of users still active after 2 months. So it's important that these metrics are just random examples. And I can't do the job to help and decide for you what is your metric. It depends on your business. And it depends on the current focus and the current stage of your company. So if you've just launched your mobile app, probably a good idea is to ask every week how many new mobile app users do we have. But a couple months later, when you're launching, I don't know, a new website, maybe the number in the acquisition key metric should be about the website traffic. But important here, right? We want to distinguish between new users, new of something, new buyers, as well as a retention metric, which is about, are we keeping the existing users? Now, let's go one step down in the pyramid. We've talked about the key metrics at the top that give us an immediate insight of how well our business is doing. On the second level of the pyramid, we want to look at what are our customers actually doing. And here, the learning of working with hundreds of startups is to really combine both quantity and quality. I've sort of structured this page. On the left, I've put metrics that are more related to acquisition, to getting new users. And on the right, I've put metrics that are more related to retaining your users. It could be the number of unique sign-up page visits. This is a number, sorry, let's go back. This is a number that only changes when your customer behavior changes. You cannot force your customers to make more visits to your page, right? That's really only if your customers are doing the right thing, this metric changes. Similarly, the percentage of the conversion rate percentage of your landing page or your sign-up page is something that depends entirely on your customer behavior. The first one, the unique number of visits, would be a quantitative metric, right? And the second one would be a qualitative metric. And another example could be the average time of the first mobile session in the app. So on the middle level, we really want to combine metrics that describe the behavior of our customers. And if you look on the other side, measuring things that are related to how well are we retaining users, it could be things like, what is the average website and app number of sessions per week? So are users coming back 3.5 times per week, or they're coming back 7 times a week? I hope it makes sense that if they come 7 times a week, they're probably more likely to be retained users and keep using our service, compared to them only coming 1 time per week. Similarly, if you have a lot of complaints, people are probably not going to be happy and are probably going to stop using your product. Or if you measure your Net Promoter Score, the higher it is, the more likely your customers will stay with you. So at the top of the pyramid, we had 4 metrics to describe the overall state of the business, a summary that if your investor calls you or a friend calls you and says, how is it going in your company? You can tell them, revenue is up, we have more nights than ever, we're adding new users, and we're keeping users. If the question is, why is the revenue up? We can go one level down in the pyramid, and we can say, revenue is up because more users are coming to our website landing page. Users are coming back more often. So the idea of these metrics is that the metrics in the middle layer are somewhat connected to the metrics in the top layer. They're not always mathematically perfectly connected with an equation, but they should be designed in such a way that your revenue should rise with customer behavior changing in the right direction. Now, if you go to the bottom layer of the pyramid, the idea is to set targets for your team and for yourself. So here we want to put all those metrics that we can set a goal for next week. We cannot set a goal for how many people will visit our website, but we can set a goal of how many influencer posts we share on social media. We can set a goal of how many call attempts we make to our B2B clients. And we can set a target for how many customers we interview if you're pre-launch. So these are things that are within your control. Similarly, we can set a TikTok ad budget, we can set an average discount for B2B deals, and we can set a goal for the customer service team to have a particular average response time for emails. So the idea of this whole pyramid is that we separate what is within our control from what the customers are doing, which ultimately drives the success of the business. Now, if we have all these metrics designed and thought about, the idea is to put them in a weekly dashboard. And every week ask the question, how have these metrics changed? So this is just a simple illustration. I would put this in a spreadsheet where every week you can enter, this week we had 50 new customers. Next week we had 60 new customers. Then you can start asking questions, what percentage are these numbers growing? And you can observe over time how your business is evolving. But the key idea about this metric is that we separate what is within our control from what our customers are doing, from what ultimately drives the business. And what ultimately drives the business is making money in a repeatable way, where we add new customers and we keep our existing customers, which is what hopefully, when you put your metrics in such a way, will allow you to do. I'm not sure how much more time we have. 5 more minutes? Or okay. I would also like to share some ideas about how to define metrics, because it's easy to talk about all these metrics, but it's harder to actually put them down. And my framework is about starting with being precise. So we really need to write down exactly what we mean when we say number of new app users. Because multiple people, if you have a bigger team, and different people talk about the number of new users, everybody needs to know exactly what you mean by a new user. Is that someone that just signed up to the page, or is it someone that also clicked on the confirmation email that they received? Number 2, we want to keep it super simple. Number 3, we want to keep it balanced. I already talked about well-documented definitions are what make or break this whole thing. Because if different people have a different understanding of what revenue means, you're talking about two different things and you can't optimize for the same thing. We're not going to spend too much time on the different definitions, but if these sound unfamiliar to you and you talk about revenue a lot, it's a good idea to dive deeper into this topic. When it comes to simplicity, my recommendation is that you write them down by hand initially. So instead of using a tool like Google Analytics that just tells you 15,700 website visitors came to your page, it's a good idea to take that number but manually write it either by hand with a pen and paper or with a spreadsheet so that you, as a leader, really know these numbers. And if an investor comes and asks you, how many new website visits did you have last week? You remember because you write it down regularly. Of course, the bigger the business gets, the less important it becomes to write this down manually. And it's also important to think about, are these metrics easy to find? So if you need to log into a tool and spend 10 minutes identifying how many, what was the conversion rate of your website, it's probably not a good metric. Ideally, it's something that you can easily find and consistently produce. On the balance part, there's this idea of leading versus lagging metrics. So in the travel business, for example, a leading metric would be the moment someone books a trip, and the lagging metric would be when they give you a review for that trip. So we both want to have some leading metrics that give us a view on what's happening in the future, but we also want to look at some lagging metrics because they're usually more accurate because it's at the end of a conversion funnel. The differentiation and the balance between relative and absolute is shown in this picture. Can I see a show of hands if this is a business that is doing well? So this is the number of customers they have, and it's growing. Is it a good business? Yes or no? Good business? Bad business? Don't know? Okay, so it's a balance in the room. I like that. So if you overlay this absolute growth of customers with the relative growth number, and I hope it's visible here, the red line, that is the number of customers we're adding every week. That is linear growth. Investors are not interested in linear growth. If you look at the growth rate in the yellow line here, it's declining. So declining growth rate looks good when you look at the absolute numbers, but investors are trained to see that this is actually a bad company. And even if you look at a company that looks like it's doing well because it's kind of going up, once you add the yellow line, you see that it flattens out, so growth is slowing down. And if you add the growth change per week, you see that the growth change per week is rapidly declining. So when you show numbers to investors, it's important to pick ideally numbers that are rooted in growth. So instead of saying we have 495 customers, it's better to say, and it's better for you to track how many new customers you have each week, because that number needs to be increasing. And it's even better to ask the question, what percentage growth do we have each week? And if you're growing super fast, it's even better to ask, what is our growth rate acceleration? But of course, not everybody is growing super fast, so it may be a way to show your absolute numbers as a way to still show traction. If you found this talk interesting, one of my side projects is a Slack community called Innovators Room, where 9,000 people connect on Slack, and we have many investors and we have many founders, and it's free to join, so I would love to see some of you there. That is the end of my talk. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope it was useful.